we know we're going to have quite a few different housing product types, and then in addition to some commercial development, we've kind of kept the commercial footprint fairly small, and that was in response to a lot of things that we heard during a lot of focus group sessions, that we didn't want to overdo commercial on this site because we want to make sure that a lot of the connections are made for people to get into the downtown, to support downtown development. We want to keep the commercial fairly small, fairly concentrated, but really providing it mostly as an entry into the gateway and then as some specific kind of public destination places along the river. And then focusing largely on residential development here and a mix of product types. So some condominium, a mix actually of owner-occupied and then renter-occupied housing units. And then these are just very initial estimates of the potential value at total build-out of the site, including the commercial phases and then all of the residential. This is about 542 housing units on this site. We anticipate it's going to be a build-out of somewhere around 8 years to 10 years total. And then it depends, you know, on what products go first, but we're expecting that we can start to develop 2 or 3 different product types and develop those simultaneously because they'll be appealing to different market segments on this property. And then, of course, it excludes any value for the transient docks, the commercial rentals of any recreational crafts, the festival grounds. That's still kind of all in flux, or other recreational components that are off the land. And then kind of moving a little bit forward. So these are some, Tom's going to talk a little bit about the typologies of the housing products that we're anticipating would go on this property. Sure, you can.
Okay, thanks. We did spend quite a bit of time looking around, and so we just wanted to show examples. You have a full palette of housing types, buildings in your city, and it's a good starting point. And part of our next step is going to be to really look on the architecture on the team, to really look at the architecture of the buildings, and you're working with developers and teams to do that would be quite interesting. But just to kind of remind you, there's a whole variety of small houses, cottages. Some of them are really interesting, like the new zero energy design Z houses that are coming up. These really nice cottages, affordable, and then some that are really more kind of archetypal, Frank Lloyd Wright, prairie style, and then the homes get bigger. And again, you can see the variety of personality and character and style. It's not all just one thing, so lots of kit parts, and then you get up into mansions. Again, the same thing. The architecture varies, but really wonderful neighborhood homes. And then there's some kind of interesting little details that are important, like accessory apartments above garages. Every now and then having maybe a little interesting shop that's just part of the neighborhood. Small scale compatible. And tree houses, something we're talking about the birders, we're talking about all sorts of maybe kind of eco-tourism things that may come into play with, say, the hospitality program. So there's some here that exist. And then you get into some of the more attached and multifamily. These are small, these are mansions, they're kind of mansions. This is a 2-pack, a duplex. Here's a 4-pack, 2 units, above 2 units or below 2 units. And then here's a 6-pack. These are really wonderful, the same size lot as a mansion, but they have, units in them, and they're great. They're great. Every unit has 3 sides of doors and windows, lots of daylight, cross ventilation. Some of my favorite types of buildings. And then, of course, they can grow into larger apartment buildings. And you have some new ones and you have some historic ones. So that's what we'll be looking at. It's quite interesting. But clearly, it's going to be building on the character of what you have here in a good way. Now, the architecture then translates into the private yards and then into the public realm. And so this calibration of all these tools, array of tools that we've collected over the years. There are over 60, 70 tools, and so we kind of narrowed those down to about 2 or 3 dozen. And they're really simple things. I won't go into detail about that. But just as some examples from other places, you'll hear terms like a flowing park. What is a flowing park? Well, it's this type of thing. These green fingers may have a character that's similar to this, even though this is in Vancouver and does have a different character. But the idea is this: it's not putting the water in pipes and sending it off. It's daylighting. It's celebrating. It's the attitude that when it starts raining, the kids get excited. They put on their Crocs and they go outside and play. They rock up the creek, as opposed to what happens today. The kids, when it rains, they go inside and play video games. We're going to get them out. We want to get the kids outdoors. And really, and really engage the community. I'm sure Steve will be out there leading a scout troop. Kids. And things like vegetative purification beds. Well, what is that? What do they look like? Well, we'll be figuring out what that is. Also, natural vegetation. These are tree houses in a mountain village I designed near Asheville, North Carolina. And just the character of different places and how we do this here will be explored. It's not just all about concrete sidewalks and asphalt streets. The idea of stepping out of your unit and getting on a boardwalk and walking down to the river. Wow, I'm on the river. It's a beach community, and it kind of portray a different character. You feel like you're on vacation year round. So there are things like that we'll really be thinking through. A street that looks like this. It's all green and has boardwalks on each side. This is from Rosemary Beach, and it's really spectacular. Beautiful water features, very artistically designed. We had a lot of conversations with the arts community. The idea of curating community art, something we really want to weave into this, and so that'll be featured. The idea of really thinking about the local food movement. You have a big transmission line like this, and you start planting community gardens and raised beds. You start looking at the forest. Just basically your front yard is like this, and living in tree homes, and also the kind of village shops and businesses that may actually be along the river. Nice scale, very charming, very human scale and personable. Okay, that's you.